The Legend of Muay Thai 9 Satra, or just Gao Satra in Thai, is an animated Thai action fantasy movie that I just saw at the cinema. Now, without giving too much away, the basic premise is the protagonist has a sacred weapon in his possession, the 9th Satra. The bad guys are trying to get their hands on it, and he's tasked with the mission of transporting it to the big bad guy's lair so that it can be used to overthrow him and save the kingdom. To be clear from the outset, I did like this movie. I had some gripes with it, and I'm probably going to start with some of those before I get to the bits that I really enjoyed. And I'm going to try and avoid spoilers for the most part. Now, there's two reasons I'm doing a movie review all of a sudden. Firstly, because I couldn't find any other English language reviews of the movie yet, so I thought this might be useful for some people in similar life situation to me where they're watching Thai movies. But also because a lot of the people subscribed to my channel are fans of Ruby, and I feel like a lot of the stuff in this movie would resonate well with Ruby fans. I'm not actually sure at this stage what the deal is with any sort of international release for this movie, but they did just release an international trailer. So I'm assuming at some point in the future there will be a means to watch this outside of Thailand. Now let's talk about the trailers a bit before I get to the movie itself. There's a Thai language trailer, which is the one that I saw and got me hyped to see the movie. And there's a newly released international trailer that's dubbed in English that's set up completely differently. And I think that was kind of crap. I've linked both of them below if you want to go watch them. They're both kind of spoilery, the international one more so just be aware of that. Well, the Thai one not really, because there's no subtitles, so if you don't speak Thai you won't get spoiled. Whereas the international one, even if you don't speak English, there are some like visual spoilers in that one. Here's a really quick comparison of the two trailers if you just want a quick sample.
ข้าจะไปรามเทพนครเพื่อยุติเรื่องราวทั้งหมดลง
ทุกคนยืนไว้ให้ดี
จงใช้ชีวิตเจ้าและเพื่อนๆบวงสรวงแก่ข้าเสียเถิด
The old man is the greatest living master of Muay Thai.
Skill, courage, integrity, strength, dedication, compassion, discipline, focus, and faith.
I'm going to the kingdom of Ramthep, and I am going to end all this.
Then burn with it!
The international trailer seems like they were going for epic, and they just kind of ended up with boring, I think. Whereas the original trailer, it conveys character and humor and action, and it has great music, and it does all of that without getting too bogged down in explaining the plot of the whole course of the movie, which the international one kind of does. I honestly have no idea if a full English dub of the movie even exists, or if they just recorded a few lines to make the trailer. I'm not really sure yet. I watched the movie in Thai with English subtitles. If you have the option of subbed or dubbed, this is definitely one of those cases where I'd recommend the subbed version every time. The English in the international trailer is just really stiff and boring, and the mouth movements, the mismatch is just really jarring at certain points, and at other points it seems okay. Also, they deliberately mispronounce some words in a way that really bothers me. You obviously won't know the difference if you don't speak Thai. The thing that's bugging me from the English trailer is the name of the city that they're trying to save in the movie. In Thai it's Ramatep, so Ramatep to flow well in English. But in the trailer they pronounce it Ramthep, which sounds stupid to me. And what they've done essentially is they've taken the Thai spelling of the word and they've transcribed that using the Romanized system for writing Thai, but then they've had the actor read it in the way that someone would read it if they don't know how to read Romanized Thai. So you just end up with Ramthep instead of Ramatep, which is what it should sound like. And given the association with Thai royalty that parts of this word have, I would have thought that the producers of the movie would have given quite a lot of importance to making sure foreign audiences could pronounce this word properly, or at least close to properly. So I just don't really understand that decision. And this brings me to talking about the film itself and one of my minor gripes with it. Now, while I do think you should watch the subbed version if you have the choice, at least in the version that I watched, there were some minor grammatical errors in the subtitles, which was a bit off-putting. Nothing too major, just things like an incorrectly conjugated verb here or there, or mixing up whether something does or does not need to be pluralized. And these were like fairly regular throughout the whole movie. Now, this didn't really affect my enjoyment or understanding of the film, but it does kind of pull your focus out of the experience a little bit when not only are you already having to read subtitles, but then you're also having to reread the subtitles a second time quite often after you've corrected the grammar in your head. And once more, I simply just don't understand why this is an issue. It has nothing to do with the language proficiency of the producers of the film. Like, all they needed to do was find literally any one native speaker of English and sit them down, watch the movie, and then have them point out any errors that need to be fixed. It's like a couple of hours extra work at most, at potentially zero cost. I really don't understand why this is a thing. Like, it's not a big deal, but it's just that extra level of polish and presentation that moviegoers are going to expect, and it's just really jarring. So let's move on to something I loved about the film. The world of this movie has been built from the ground up using Thai culture, Thai Buddhism, Thai mythology. Some of these things are adapted and adjusted somewhat for the fantasy setting. Elements are mixed together in new ways. But it gives the whole movie a really unique atmosphere that's quite different from what you might see in similar stories coming out of Japan or China that are more widely viewed by Western audiences. If you were to watch cinema from, say, India or Sri Lanka, you'd probably see similar story tropes taking place. Getting to experience traditional Thai cinema in this style of movie was one of my main reasons for wanting to go see this, and I wasn't disappointed on that front. A lot of the story and character elements are inspired by the ancient work of literature, the Ramayana, which itself was adapted by the Hindu epic, the Ramayana, which you're probably more likely to have heard of. The bad guys of the movie, the Yaksa, have a few different mythological beings in their ranks, but mostly are based on the yak, or giants, that you can see statues of guarding Buddhist temples all over Thailand. In the Ramayana, these are demonic beings ruling malevolently over a great kingdom, and their leader is in conflict with the protagonist of the Ramayana, Rama. Yak are always presented in Thailand as wild and scary and dangerous, but at the same time, their role in contemporary Thai belief is that of a protector and as a guardian of nature, of things that are sacred, things that are virtuous. Superficially, they share a lot of features with orcs that you would see in other fantasy movies like this. But unlike typical orcs, these creatures are also presented with a certain beauty and regality about them, in spite of their more grotesque or demonic features. There's a kind of ambivalent duality in demonic creatures seen in South and Southeast Asian cosmologies, as opposed to the demonic creatures in Western belief systems that are kind of more black and white in their portrayal. This duality of the Yak figure in Thai culture makes for a really good villainous faction. By sending our hero out on this quest to restore peace to Ramatep by overthrowing the evil Yaksa, not only is he defeating a villain, but he's also reenacting the Ramayana, and in doing so, realigning the natural order of the universe according to Thai cosmology, where the Yak are not supposed to be inherently malevolent beings anymore. Now, you don't need to understand any of this background to appreciate the movie and enjoy it. Just the aesthetic design of all the different creatures and things make it interesting and refreshing to watch anyway. But my point here is that a lot of thought has gone into making up this world, and I think that's really cool. While the world itself and the overall themes of the story really impressed me, unfortunately the storytelling did not. It's not awful, but it's just kind of okay. It's lifted a great deal by the original elements that I mentioned just before, but it could have been so much more. The story arc is a simple one, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but is hampered by poor pacing and character development, which is pretty crucial to tell a simple story well. The protagonist is the least complex and compelling character, which happens a lot in this kind of story arc. He has the cliched hero's backstory, And once he sets out on his quest, he is just kind of the archetypal hero through and through. And the main antagonist suffers from the same kind of problem. He's just a generic bad guy. The rest of the main characters are pretty good, and I really liked the relationship between the exiled monkey prince character and the Yakuza defector character. They were given enough screen time to flesh out the dynamic of their relationship, and so later on when there was conflict and tension, the audience actually feels those emotions more genuinely. The Chinese pirate princess character had real problems with this. She shared one bonding scene with the protagonist that just came out of nowhere, and then later we were expected to feel this special bond between them that frankly hadn't been developed at all. She wasn't a bad character on her own, so I think they would have been better off not labouring to ship her with the main character so hard and just let her be her own thing. The pacing was a bit all over the place. A lot of time was spent introducing the main character. We got to see his training and his motivations and his progression of skills. And that's where we saw a lot of the world building, and we saw a lot of those really cool Thai elements that I really liked. The problem was that it just took up too much time. By the time our hero meets up with the other three main characters and they set out on their quest officially, there's literally just a montage scene, and then they reach their destination. And the movie ends pretty quickly after that. It feels like we skipped the middle of the movie because the beginning was too long. Maybe if we had seen more of their journey together, I would have bought into the relationship dynamics a bit more. And also, at the end of the movie, a lot of the loose threads were tied up using a narrator speaking through the end credits, which seems like just kind of a cop-out to me, to be honest. A little more time spent adventuring within Ramatep City itself would have been beneficial here. In fact, they could have just made the movie a little bit longer, because it doesn't feel like a real city that's lived in, not even by the bad guys. It's the most important location in the movie, but we spend the least time there. So I'm not really 100% on board with going through so much effort to save it. It just seems like the final dungeon in a video game. As an aside, there is an online comic for the movie that I found. It was released in the months leading up to the film's release, and going through the backstory of a bunch of the characters in more detail. I've linked it below if you want to check it out, although it's only in Thai. I've only skimmed parts of it, as I'm not really invested enough in this story to devote time to translating all of this. But it seems to present a grittier version of the world in this movie, and gives some more depth, some much needed depth to some of the other characters. I feel like this kind of material should be supplementary though, and not necessary for appreciating the main part of the story. A similar problem that the Star Wars universe has sometimes with supplementary information. Now, pacing and plot progression, as I've described, could potentially ruin a movie. In this case, I'm glad to report it does not. This movie remains entertaining to watch throughout the whole runtime, even though the pacing of the story is a bit weird. There is still plenty of clunkily delivered exposition, but that exposition doesn't withhold action from us. We still get to see plenty of regular fight scenes throughout all of that exposition. So it doesn't really matter that it kind of sucks, because we get to watch the fight scenes as well. And that's the other thing that drew me to seeing this movie, and I'm glad to say it's a real positive for the movie. As a less widely represented form of martial arts in Western cinema, the Muay Thai fights presented in this movie are a breath of fresh air and really faithfully portray the significance that this kind of fighting has in Thai culture. The different statures and abilities of all the characters introduce variable constraints that lead to some really well thought out choreography. So two normal people fighting is cool, but if one character can't use their leg and the other character is either super agile or super strong, then that leads to some really creative and engaging choreography for the fight scenes. The weapon design factors into this as well, with a lot of the characters' unique weapons reminding me of the design philosophy of Ruby, with transforming multifunctional instruments that make use of maybe both melee and ranged combat at the same time. When I first saw the weapon that this movie is named for, the 9th Satra, I was a little perplexed at how this football-looking thing was going to function as a weapon. As soon as I saw it in action though, I immediately fell in love with it, in the same way I did first watching the character trailers for Ruby. The one criticism I have of the action though is the camera work during the fights. They use a lot of close-up shots of the characters' faces or certain body parts while there's fighting going on, and they move the camera around a lot. It just makes it a bit harder to follow what's actually going on. I think if they just pulled the camera back a bit, and just let the beautiful Muay Thai choreography speak for itself. I think all of the fight scenes would be better for it. Now, obviously, the way they did it, I'm guessing, is easier on the animators, on the budget, on the schedule. Animating one arm during a complex move is a lot simpler, obviously, than animating two entire bodies interacting organically and naturally. I feel like they certainly overused that trick though, and it was a bit frustrating for me sometimes. Overall, I thought this movie was pretty good, and I hope that the people who made it go on to make other stuff in a similar vein in the future. Seeing Thai culture on display in an international style movie was really cool, and I hope a lot of people around the world get to see this. I do think this story would have been better told as an animated series rather than as a feature-length film, particularly the plot point about having to master the 9 different virtues in order to be able to use the sacred weapon. That would have been a really useful structuring device for a long-form series in a similar way to how Aang's mastery of the 4 elements in Avatar: The Last Airbender structured the way that the plot played out through that whole series. In that show, it was a plot device that not only carried Aang's spiritual journey, but it allowed for a lot of great world building and just the organic development of really good relationship dynamics between the characters. Which, as I noted, is one of the weaker points of this movie. In this movie, the 9 virtues plot point, it hit some good beats, but it did still feel kind of rushed, obviously, but they kind of did the best they could in the constraints of a movie. Just like with Ruby, the weaker elements were the writing and the pacing, but also like Ruby, the highlights were the lore and the world itself, and the fight choreography and weapon design. And ultimately, that's the reason why I've put this review on my channel, because I like this movie for the same reason that I liked Ruby. Last thing I'll mention is that the soundtrack is pretty cool. If you like the song in the Thai trailer, it's by a Thai band called Slot Machine. I've linked 2 of their songs below, the one in the trailer and also another song that appears in the movie itself. But thanks for watching my review of Satra. I'm not going to give it a numerical rating because I think that's really arbitrary. I do absolutely think this movie is worth seeing though, despite the criticisms that I had of it. If you liked this review, be sure to like, share the video, subscribe to the channel. I've kind of bailed on doing Ruby videos for most of the current volume due to being busy doing my PhD research in Thailand, so apologies if you've been hanging out for those videos. I do plan on doing a reaction video for the finale of volume 5 though, so hang out for that, and then I'll be doing a review of the whole volume as well. I have been a little underwhelmed with Ruby lately, to be honest, but the last few episodes have been pretty great, so I'm feeling a bit more hyped again now. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time.